Haribol. Welcome tonight to the Yoga Wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita. My name is Janapati Das, and thank you so much. Let me offer my respects to you for coming tonight to listen to the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita. We are going to read some from the Bhagavad Gita as it is. It's entitled As It Is. It's translated by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And as we've said many times before, it is taught, there are many translations of the Bhagavad Gita, but it is as it is because it is taught unchanged, unaltered, and without any personal endeavor by the translator to bring about his own glory or to try to give his own personal opinion about things, but rather it is a Bhagavad Gita as it is. It is handed down from teacher to student all the way back to Sri Krishna himself. And so I'd like to take this moment to first of all offer my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual teacher, Jagat Guru Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Srila Prabhupada, the disciple of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who I'd also like to offer my most humble obeisances to and ask for the mercy from both of them in relaying this class and relaying the information that was given to me by my spiritual teacher. So, the most important aspect of the Bhagavad Gita is to follow the instructions of your spiritual master, because in the story of the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna, the Supreme Lord, is acting as the spiritual master for his student, disciple, Arjuna, the warrior, and Arjuna has presented questions and concerns and a dilemma to Krishna in the way of receiving information from Sri Krishna. So likewise, I have received this information from my spiritual teacher, and he's received it from his spiritual teacher, the same information that has been handed down from Sri Krishna to Arjuna. So unfettered, unchanged, not my personal opinion, but actually the absolute truth as handed down from God himself. So the first thing that, of course, all spiritual teachers in the lineage of teachers instruct their students is to engage in the hearing and chanting of Krishna's names, which is known as kirtan. So kirtan, if you are unfamiliar with this, is the singing of mantras. And mantra comes from two Sanskrit words, man, which means the mind, and tra, which means to draw away. So the mantras are spiritual sound vibrations. They are not material sound vibrations. And they are sung and repeated and also heard from living entities, that when a living entity sings and hears the mantras as handed down from teacher to student, from God himself, from Sri Krishna, they are benefited. In other words, the living entity, the spiritual entity within the body is benefited, because the living entity within the body is not material but spiritual. And this is what the Bhagavad Gita teaches. So we are going to do this kirtan as instructed by my spiritual teacher and as instructed by the whole spiritual lineage known as the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, which is student to teacher all the way back to Sri Krishna himself. And Sri Krishna, because the Bhagavad Gita means the song of God, after all, this is a song of God, and it is joyfully performed and joyfully received and beneficial to all living entities, the highest benediction for the living entities. So please join along. In this, I will sing the mantra. You can sit back and listen the first time through, the second time through, sing back with me. And I will do a couple mantras to give respectful obeisances to my spiritual teacher and to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is non-different than Krishna and gave us this form of sacrifice for this day and age of hearing and chanting Krishna's names in kirtan. So please join along.
Namo Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Namine Kodakaruna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Sayate Namo Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Namine Kodakaruna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Sayate Raja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gauranga Raja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gauranga Raja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gauranga Nityananda, 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 Nigo. Chaitanya, Chaitanya, Nigo. Nityananda, 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 Nigo. Chaitanya, Chaitanya, Nigo. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Haribol, and welcome again. Thank you very much. I was born in the darkness, ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Thank you very much. So we are going to get into the Bhagavad Gita as it is. Such a wonderful, wonderful book. I'm going to show it again here if you see it. This is the 1972 edition. So there are some other different editions. This is the one that I highly recommend that my spiritual teacher uses. It's okay to use other editions if you like, but this is the best one if you can get this one. This is the last one that Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada used, and then the new editions, of course, have some different translations, a little bit different translations, so this is the best one. So today what we're going to do is we're going to read from the 16th chapter. But first, I'll talk a little bit about the Bhagavad Gita. If you're not very familiar with the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita, this particular story and treatise and scripture of the Vedic tradition, is a small about 30 or 45 minute period on a battlefield. In the story, it's a story, but it's also history. So it's like the Puranas. In Vedic tradition, the Puranas were considered history. So it's not, a lot of times people will translate this as mythology, this great mythology, but it's not mythology. It did actually happen. But it is also very philosophically wonderful, and it doesn't take away from the philosophical depth of this yoga wisdom. The Bhagavad Gita, of course, as I said in the beginning of the class, was the Bhagavan is in Sanskrit the name for God. One name for God. It means God. And Gita is a song or music. So the Bhagavad Gita is a song of God. And this particular conversation, and it is a conversation between the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, and the warrior prince Arjuna. So in one point it is history, but it is also this wonderful philosophical treatise on all of us, actually, our relationship, all of our relationships, all living entities' relationships with the Supreme Lord, individually and collectively. So while we can look into a historical event and conversation that happened between Arjuna and Krishna as being a very wonderful thing in a historical context, we can also marvel at the relationship of the living entity with Krishna. So in the story of the Bhagavad Gita, which comes from the great epic, the Mahabharata, which is something like 18,000 verses. It's the largest epic story in the world, the Mahabharata. And if you can read that, that would be also wonderful, because that's wonderful in itself. But the Bhagavad Gita is a conversation that happens towards the end of the Mahabharata between Krishna and Arjuna. And in the story, of course, there is a dilemma of Arjuna, his brothers, Yudhishthira, Bhima, Nakula, and Sahadev, who are known as the Pandava brothers. And the Pandava brothers had rightfully, because of blood right, had the right to the kingdom, the Vedic kingdom, the world kingdom, actually, to be and without going too far into the story of the Mahabharata, basically the war is based on the fact that their cousins usurped the kingdom illegally and did not give it back, even though there was a great diplomatic attempt to do so. And so this battle is about to take place between the Pandavas, their whole side of their armies, and there are millions of people that were fought in this battle. This is the greatest battle ever. And on the other side, the Duryodhana and his brothers and his side, basically. So there's millions of people on the other side. But basically, this war wasn't. There were well-wishers who actually, because of political and economic necessity, sided with one side or the other. You know, in this case, there were very many well-wishers of the Pandavas, including teachers, martial teachers, and family members that sided on the opposite side. And so Arjuna, in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, you can read in the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita and also in the Mahabharata, he asks Krishna, because Krishna has agreed to be the chariot driver, although he agreed, he gave an option to Arjuna to either have his army, Krishna's army, or to have him. And of course, Arjuna, being a devotee of Krishna and a friend of Krishna, knew that if he had Krishna, because Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even if Krishna didn't fight in that battle, which he didn't, he agreed not to, he would, all victory would be for his side. So he selected that. Of course, Duryodhana, not having that spiritual vision, thought, wow, I have Krishna's army, so this is great. So he took that. But Krishna, and you can see in this picture, Krishna is driving the chariot of his dear devotee and friend Arjuna. And this is really a wonderful analogy too, because when you have Krishna as your driver, you know, in a symbolic sense too, in your life, then all success is yours. So anyway, Arjuna asked Krishna in the beginning of this battle to drive his chariot to the middle of this battle, and there's the two opposing sides. And so I've said this many times before, there's definitely there was a Vedic etiquette for warriors. There's a whole warrior class, and there was, you know, rules and regulations about fighting, and it wasn't just like, okay, let's go in and drop bombs or invade the country and kill, you know, blow up schools or hospitals or whatever, and, you know, kill men, women, and children. No, it was the men who were out on the battlefield, who were in a warrior class. They were trained warriors. I mean, incredible warriors, to say the least. Arjuna was one of the greatest archers and warriors in history. And he said, let's assess who is on the battlefield here and what the armies are set up like. You know, and they had these things called phalanxes, which were formations, really strategic formations that the generals and whatnot, General Bhishma on one side, and I'm trying to remember the name of the actual one of the main generals on the Pandava side, but it's in the Bhagavad Gita also. Yuyut. Anyway, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but anyway, they had these great phalanxes or formations of armies. And so anyway, that's a whole other thing about Vedic warfare. But so Arjuna went with Krishna and assessed on the battlefield, and that was the beginning of suddenly his dilemma of seeing this great battle about to take place over a kingdom, over the kingdom of the world, right? And he was put into a situation where he didn't want to fight. He didn't want to, because he saw his brothers and teachers and well-wishers and people on opposing sides that were going to kill each other and fight. And this was, you know, as a devotee of Krishna, he felt very soft in his heart for the mass slaughter that was about to take place over a kingdom in his, what he thought was just a frivolous material pursuit. And so he started laying out all these things to Krishna, why it was a bad idea to go into the battle all the rules and regulation in society about fighting and unnecessary warfare, and Krishna then basically called him a fool. He's saying that he said, while speaking like a wise man, because you're apparently speaking like a wise man by telling me about all the rules and regulations that I've indirectly set up through my inconceivable energies for societies to run very smoothly. Basically, you're preaching to the person. It's like, but while speaking like that basically was saying that a wise man, in Sanskrit they refer to it as dhiras, or a very sober person who's wise and not bewildered, understands the absolute truth, and he does not lament for the living or the dead, because he has a deeper vision. And so then he goes into, in the Bhagavad Gita, this song of God, because the whole thing is actually sung. This whole thing is sung, but it's also a deeper understanding and treatise about the relationship of love between the living entity and Krishna. And it's very wonderful. We go through all these chapters, and there are different understandings about the nature of the spirit soul inside the body, that it's not the body, that he says right off the bat that, none of these people, never was there a time when any of these kings, or any of us, I'm paraphrasing of course, did not exist. So these people on the battlefield, they're in temporary dresses of your well-wishers and teachers and uncles and whatnot, but they are eternal spirit souls that, as the embodied soul continually passes in this body that we're temporarily in, from boyhood to middle age to youth, boyhood to youth to middle age to old age, and then similarly at the time of death. Sorry, speaking of tongues going too fast. Similarly, at the time of death, the soul the living entity will pass on to another body, and this is the science of reincarnation, right? The science of the spirit soul continually being born into new bodies. We've gone through this, actually. It's also in chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita as it is. So there's a lot of information in this Bhagavad Gita, and like I was saying, that it's already been 40 minutes, and I've already gone through just a little sliver of the information, right, of this Bhagavad Gita. And so we're going to go ahead and read from the 16th chapter. And on the 16th chapter, Krishna has already said many, many things about the nature of the living entity, the purpose of the living entities, and you can see these in some of the classes I've uploaded on the YouTube channel for Yoga Kirtan Hawaii. And we can only take a little piece of the Bhagavad Gita, but that little piece is so we can discuss it endlessly and just in new and wonderful ways. And these are things that my spiritual teacher has taken verses and discussed them, and we can all cherish and learn from these, even just one verse of the Bhagavad Gita. So I'm going to take a 3 verses, actually, in the 16, but it's 3 or 4 verses. It's actually a very large content, so I can only discuss a few things about that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read from that, and we're going to discuss some of these tendencies of, and the chapter is entitled "The Divine and Demoniac Natures." So that's the divine and the demoniac natures of the living entity. So when I say that, I say it kind of with a little hesitancy, because when I say the divine nature of the living entity is actually the true nature of the living entity. So it is the spiritual living entity, the jivatma, the spirit soul, that is temporarily covered up by a gross and physical body. It's laid out in chapter 7, earth, water, fire, air, mind, intelligence, and false ego. That's covering this pure spirit soul or living entity, and is the living entity under this delusion, right? As also stated in chapter 2, right? It's under this delusional state, that one that Arjuna was also under, thinking that, oh, these are all my family members on the battlefield. They were actually spirit souls playing the parts in a temporary body and a temporary mind, covering subtle and gross covering of material energy, right? So when I say the divine and demoniac natures, the divine nature is actually like wetness is part of water. You can't take wetness away from water. These divine natures, you cannot take these tendencies or natures away from the living entity in its purest form, right? In our pure form, we have these divine natures. The demoniac natures, however, just like in the sense of we have milk, right? This is something like Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada and my spiritual masters made this comparison. You have milk in its pure form, but if you add an agent like a lemon or tamarind to that milk, it will curdle the milk into a curd. So curd is technically milk, but it is in a changed form. So similarly, in the contact of the living entity in its pure form, like milk, with the material energy and everything that comes with it, the lust, and we'll talk about those kind of things in the demoniac natures, changes the living entity. So in its pure form, the living entity is in a relationship of love with Krishna. Just like in the Bhagavad Gita, we were saying it is a song of God, but it is also a love song in its pure form. But what is love when it has that changing agent? It is lust. And when I say lust, we think about that in English as kind of like a sexual thing. But sexual lust is just a part of lust. Lust is actually a burning desire, a perverted form of love that is also a desire to own and control things. So our love for Krishna under the contact of the material energy is changed to lust, or the desire to be Krishna, to be in control. And so this is what Arjuna's dilemma was. He was in this lustful state of wanting to control and wanting to enjoy his family members on the battlefield, and wanting to dictate which way, you know what I think. So that's the lustful thing. Oh God, you know what I think would be best for me is if I did this, So we are. So when I say that divine natures, this is what is normally a true spiritual. And when we talk about demoniac, no one's really actually a demon, but people act demoniacally when they go further and further away from Krishna. In other words, they are influenced by the material energy and act accordingly as the Supreme Lord themselves. So I'm going to read through this, and this is actually text 1 through 3. There's a lot of qualities, and I'm going to read a little bit, of course, of the purport. There is a purport by Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. He makes a lot of commentary on that, which was very wonderful. But we're going to also read text 4 about some of the demoniac, and you can see some of the how it is the flip of the divine nature. So the blessed Lord said, fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity and simplicity, non-violence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion, and freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty and steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, freedom from envy, and the passion for honor. These transcendental qualities of son of Bharat belong to godly men endowed with divine nature. So just to quickly read, I'm going to read on to the, and we'll come back to it also, the text 4. Arrogance, pride, anger, conceit, harshness, and ignorance. These qualities belong to those of the demoniac nature, O son of Prita. And you notice there are only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 listed here, whereas there are so many qualities as divine nature, but the demoniac nature, they encompass so much when you're under it. So I want to read a little bit of the report, and because there's some really wonderful things that Bhaktivedanta Swami says. He says, in the beginning of the 15th chapter, the banyan tree of this material world was explained. The extra roots coming out of it were compared to the activities of the living entities, some auspicious, some inauspicious. In the 9th chapter also, the devas are godly and the asuras are ungodly, or demons, were explained. Now, according to Vedic rites, activities in the modes of goodness are considered auspicious for the progress on the path of liberation, and such activities are known as Deva Prakriti, transcendental by nature. So those who are situated in the transcendental nature make progress on the path of liberation. So one of the most, okay, let me read the next sentence. For those who are acting in the modes of passion and ignorance, on the other hand, there is no possibility of liberation. So these qualities in the divine nature, what's really what I said in the beginning, that the living entity by nature is of the same spiritual energy as Krishna. Same spiritual energy as Krishna. But they are of the same quality, but not of the same quantity. In other words, we are not the Supreme Lord, but we are a spark of God. So therefore we have the same qualities spiritually as Krishna. So the divine natures, while they are for the living entity in the material world, they are also of the same quality of the spiritual entity himself. So engaging in this situation, in these qualities, helps purify, because one of the statements here, and this was what it talks about, a true godly person, fearlessness, purification of one's existence, and cultivation of spiritual knowledge. And fearlessness is really a wonderful thing, because the living entity under the conditioned state in this material world is consistently under fear. They're consistently under fear, and even if they're arrogant enough, and arrogance is also a quality of demoniac nature, thinking, I am in control, I have it under control, my body is young, my body is healthy, I have it all together, I have a lot of things, I have this, I have that, my life is going really good. And then even if your life continues to go very good, you can see as life goes on and the body starts to break down, those things that you used to do, maybe you don't have them anymore. The girl that was very beautiful either left you because something, or she's not so beautiful anymore because her body is breaking down too. So this is what happens then, what is seemingly a fleeting fearlessness in the material world, or temporary, what Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada would call the fallible soldiers. So you gather all your soldiers of like my job, my beautiful body, my beautiful looks, my things that I have, the money that I have, my success in my life. These are all fallible soldiers, because sooner or later they will fail you in the material life, because everything is a temporary flash in the pan. Sooner or later, those soldiers will not be there to protect you from the greatest fear. And that greatest fear, and there are a lot of little fears throughout life. You know, I think there's an undercurrent of fear, as my spiritual teacher would say, because there's always a fear of losing things, or the fear of that somebody will take things away, or the fear that I won't get that happiness that I was looking for, that I'm desiring for in the material world. There's always this fear, and then the great fear at the end, which is likened in the Srimad Bhagavatam, another great scripture, as the analogy is the birds making nest and feeling very comfortable in their family life, and their nest, the comfort of their nest, and the children and everything that they've produced and gathered, but then they get the fearfulness of hearing a roaring of a lion. The roaring of the lion. The roaring of the lion is likened to death coming. It's a great fear. So this what it says in the divine nature is fearlessness, and the word in Sanskrit, of course, is I'll look it up right now. Abhayam, and I believe abhayam means fear, and when you put a in front of the Sanskrit word, it's an opposite. So there's fearlessness. So what is a fearlessness? That the devotee who takes shelter not in their own attributes, which Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, my spiritual master, have likened to many, many zeros without Krishna. Krishna is the one. Krishna is the one. If you have many attributes and you put Krishna at the beginning, then you have a lot of value. But if you have no Krishna and you try to take shelter in these fallible soldiers, or these things that you've accomplished in your life for your own glory, they're a bunch of zeros. There's a great amount of fear there. And the great fear at the end, of course, is death. What's going to happen when you lose it all? You lose everything. What's going to happen? That's a great fear. But the devotee of Krishna learns the absolute truth from Krishna, and through the expansion of Krishna as their spiritual teacher. And the spiritual teacher teaches them about Krishna, because they themselves have seen the truth by approaching a spiritual master. And this is stated, of course, in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, verse 34. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master, render service unto him, and this self-realized soul, this teacher will, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but I'm not very good, my brain is not very good about memorizing things, but self-realized soul, or the spiritual master, can teach you about the absolute truth, because they have seen the truth by approaching the spiritual master, who has also seen the truth by approaching the spiritual master. And this lineage, like I said, has been handing down this absolute truth, and what to do in your life to understand this absolute truth from Krishna, since time immemorial. And so there is this fearlessness, and the fearlessness comes of a devotee who takes shelter of Krishna by understanding that they are not all great, they are not all powerful. The things that they have are all coming from the grace of Krishna already. And if Krishna gives you then something, that's wonderful that you can use it in service of Krishna. And if something gets taken away, it's okay, because that's also by the grace of Krishna. And so everything, just like a child takes shelter of the mother in her arms, there is a fearlessness by the devotee of Krishna, that Krishna will give all protection and will be there for him when you have to leave this body. And that is the diras, the Sanskrit word, the sober person who understands that this world is temporary. I am not my body. I am not my mind. I am a spiritual entity traveling through this world, and I have voluntarily forgotten Krishna. I have voluntarily decided that I am Krishna. And this is what is a problem, because I am not my body and I am not my mind. I am a spiritual entity, and I need that spiritual food. I need the Bhagavad Gita. I need the loving relationship for Krishna that I have voluntarily given up to try to be on my own. So there is this fearlessness, right, from a devotee that knows that I am with Krishna. Krishna will protect me, because this is my original and normal and eternal relationship that exists. So, and there, and I also brought the Bible, because there are some very wonderful things in the Bible that relate to the message of Krishna. And this one, of course, is from the Psalms, and this is Psalm 23, which we may know. It's a very common one. And it says, "The Lord is my shepherd," and a shepherd guides the living entity. "I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in the green pastures, and he leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake." Right? The holy names of Krishna are non-different than Krishna, and they are all powerful and all purifying, which is another verse in here, the purification of one's existence. So the living, before I go on, the spiritual master, who is also a shepherd, because he is an expansion of Krishna, he is also guiding us back to Krishna, back to this resting place with Krishna. He understands that the direction by chanting Krishna's names, by applying this relationship of the Bhagavad Gita in our life, is a purification of our existence in this material world while we're in an impure state. It's the only medicine that can also lead us to the goal, which is pure love for Krishna. So the love for Krishna is the means by removing ourselves from this material world and reinstating our relationship with Krishna. But it is also the goal. It is a continual, eternal relationship and activity. So continuing what I was saying about the fear. "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death," this is the great fear that living entities are experiencing, right? "I will fear no evil, for you are with me, my rod and my staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of mine enemies, and you anoint my head with oil, my cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." See, it's just a very wonderful, wonderful psalm, right to the point. So Lord Jesus Christ was a great Vaishnava. He was teaching the great people of the Bible, King David, they were devotees of God. So they understood that there is a fearlessness. The only fearfulness is when you are in the demoniac mentality of being away from God, of thinking that you are God. Arrogance, pride, anger, conceit, harshness, and ignorance. Ignorance is a great one, because it's when you're an ignorant of who you are, then you think, oh, I am great. You're proud. What's pride? Pride is like false bodily identification. I'm so great. I've got these great attributes about me. I've got my body is great. My skin color is great. My whatever is great. anger, and then you're angry, consistently angry, because as we've learned from the Bhagavad Gita, that by contemplating the objects of the senses, one develops attachment for them. And when one develops attachment for the objects of the senses, one is eventually driven into lust, or desire to control and enjoy those things that actually will never, ever bring us satisfaction or happiness. So, we have so many wonderful things, and this is great. I mean, it's hard to we'll go over some of these here, but you can meditate on so many of these divine natures. You know, fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge. Those things go all hand in hand. This is what we're doing here. When we are taught by our spiritual teacher, who is an expansion of Krishna's mercy, to hear and chant Krishna's names and be happy. We will be happy. We will cleanse our heart of all the dust that's accumulated from material lust and desire for our own glory and our own happiness in the material world sense. When he teaches us that is a cultivation of spiritual knowledge. You are not your body. You are not your mind, he says. You can understand this by hearing and chanting Krishna's names. So this is a very wonderful thing. So there's other things here. And another one, freedom from anger. We go turn the page and we see that a demoniac nature is being angry. If you are free from anger, anger is something that will never ever allow you to come to know this loving relationship with Krishna, because all anger is really a manifestation of anger towards God for making it so that you cannot enjoy the way you want to enjoy, or try to be the Lord the way you want to be Lord, because you are Lord. Why you're like, why are you stopping me from being Lord? I'm Lord. Right? So, and then, you know, my spiritual master would always say, then you can look to a picture of Krishna right there. You say, "Dear Krishna, I'm mad at you." I'm so mad at you. And then you get like, oh my God. You're like looking at Krishna and you think, wow, Krishna is so beautiful and so loving. He's just looking at you with love. He's not mad at you. He loves you. And then you just feel like, oh yeah, I'm just mad at you, and this is just silly. I shouldn't be mad at you for this. So, aversion to fault finding. This is a lot of really wonderful things here. Fault finding. If you think that you are the greatest thing, then you will constantly find fault in everyone around you, because they're not you. And you are mad and you're angry at Krishna because they're not you. Compassion, freedom from covetousness, you know, it's just, you know, all these things come out of this cultivation of spiritual knowledge. The more you feel lower, you know, because Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that one should chant the names of the Lord in a humble state of mind, feeling oneself to be lower than the straw in the street and not expecting any respect from anyone, because you feel so low in the straw of the street and not worthy to receive the love from Krishna, that Krishna picks you up and you feel supported and you feel compassion for everyone around you, because so many people, including yourself, but just definitely so many people, 99.99999% of the people in the world are floundering, trying to engage in the demoniac nature of all these arrogance, pride, I mean, anger, conceit, harshness, and ignorance. I mean, this is like the epitome of social media, of the political discourse that goes on in our world. I know better, this person's terrible, it's just fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, giving of helping people understand their true nature and their out of compassion that this person is suffering. This person is we're all suffering in this material world, and what can be the greater charity than to teach people about who they really are and how they can get out of this suffering. It's very wonderful. Gentleness, modesty and steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, freedom, and that's cleanliness, cleanliness of our heart too, externally and internally. Freedom from envy. I want that. Why can't I be like that person? Or why can't I be like Krishna? The passion for honor. Somebody says something to us, and I can't believe that person said that about me. How great I am. So, belong to godly men endowed with divine nature. So the godly men, there's so many, and they don't even feel like very godly men. They're lower than the straw on the street, and they can chant Krishna's names and touch the hearts of so many people, like my spiritual teacher, and like Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. It changed the heart of the most demoniac, and when you say demoniac, you think these people are terrible, but all you can think about is what pain people put themselves through, just for all these things, for their honor and their arrogance and their pride. So I'm going to read a little bit more, and then we'll actually finish up here. But I would suggest to, just because this is such a lengthy discussion of spiritual knowledge, is to meditate and read these purports by His Divine Grace. And they're so wonderful. They're very wonderful. Here's one at the very end. Akrodha means to check anger. Even if there is provocation, one should be tolerant. How easy is that to do? Especially in the social media. Somebody says something and calls you whatever they call you now, a-hole or snowflake or whatever. They're just like say things and you're like sitting there and it's spinning through your head all day, even if you don't say anything right away, and you're like constructing a response of how you're going to really put them in their place. It's really funny, because you think somehow or another you will be able to convince this person on the opposite side that they're wrong. And even if you did convince them, they don't believe they're wrong, because they're angry. They're angry also, and they're thinking over there. And this is how the social media pits people against each other. It's terrible. It's actually, we should have complete compassion and be tolerant. More tolerant than the tree, as Lord Chaitanya says. More tolerant than the tree. Devoid of all sense of false prestige and ready to offer all respects to others, and never expecting respect in return. For once one becomes angry, his whole body becomes polluted. I mean, I think I feel that way. Sometimes I've been like, somebody says something to me and it's just like, takes over you're just like, you're just like polluted, your whole body's polluted. Or you can just be like, okay, whatever. Anger is the product of the modes of passion and lust. So cultivating in the modes of passion and lust is going to cause all kinds of problems, because you want to elevate your consciousness to the modes of goodness. So as is recommended, when we find ourselves in an angry state, or we find ourselves in a depressed state, or we find ourselves in a happy state, whatever it might be, we could chant Krishna's names as instructed by the spiritual master, expansion of Krishna's mercy, non-different than Krishna, a representative of the Bhagavad Gita, of Kirtan, of everything, to check your anger by chanting Krishna's names and keeping your consciousness in a divine state. Anger is the product of modes of passion, unless the one is transcendently situated should check himself from anger. So, and then a little bit of the next one. Apashunam is means that one should not find fault with others or correct them unnecessarily. So there's a lot to be said about that, and we can kind of reflect upon these kinds of things. But I would recommend just take it from your own state of your life, you know. Look at these divine nature, the purport, and then this whole chapter is about that. It's so wonderful the way that Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada lays out this transcendental scripture of the Bhagavad Gita as it is. So that's all for today, and I'm going to chant a little bit. Thank you very much. Tune back to where I was.
Karuna Svarupaya Radha Krishna Stayate Namo Sila Svarupananda Ramam Sanamne Karuna Svarupaya Radha Krishna Prastayan Hari Puru Itago Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribol. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening. Namaste.